You're listening to episode 178 of SLP. Expect news, fan feedback and results from 6 different comps this weekend and regular interruptions for crunchies and cruising. Get strapped in for all that and much more on your favourite podcast, the Super League Pod. Right, everyone, welcome along to episode 178 of the Super League Pod. I'm your host, Mark, and I'm joined by co-host this week, Tim G. How has your week been, Tim G?
Yeah, it's not been too bad. I had a little bit of travel for work last week, which was interesting. Got to go and see a different part of the company, which was quite unusual, but good. And then Friday, I had the delight of actually working from... went over to my mum and dad's and was working from there, which was nice. Meant I could sit there in the shorts and t-shirt and just do that. So rather than having to and just enjoying the glorious weather, went to the West London derby on Saturday. See Brentford beat QPR 2-1, which was good fun. Including,
well, I don't know what the context of that is on league positions and things like that. I have no idea.
It puts Brentford within a point of the playoffs, which is ridiculous, and we don't really want it to happen, but it means we are just I think someone worked out that if we win both our remaining fixtures, we've got an 85% chance of making the playoffs, which, considering
potentially then 3 games away from the Premier League for Brentford. Wow. Exactly,
which is, we don't do well we never win in the playoffs, so it's fine. We've been in the playoff. We've got the worst playoff record of any football team. We've been in the playoffs 8 times and never won. So, there we go.
Wow. There you go. Well,
what about you?
Do you know what my week's been mostly filled with? Every time I've left the front room and then come back into it after a few minutes, Emma has been having a different new episode of Cruising with Jane McDonald on... So, Jane McDonald... putting Wakefield on the map in a way that Trinity have struggled to do for some time now. So my weekend's mostly been rocking around.
Is this a hint from Emma that she wants to get you to take her on a cruise?
Well, that's come up now, but I think it's a hint would suggest it's something subtle. This has not been a subtle a subtle encounter, no. So in between trips to Wigan and stuff like that, I've come home to lots of Jane McDonald.
Having not managed to watch a whole episode of Cruising with Jane McDonald, what is it all about? Does she go out to popular night spots and go cruising?
Well, she generally tends to find every white English person she can find on a cruise ship and make conversation with them, and then sings a song at the end that the cruise she's been on has inspired her to sing. Is basically what I think the premise of the show is.
That sounds high quality television.
I'm not suggesting that Jane McDonald's a racist. I'm just saying, from what I've seen, she only seems to speak to white people from the north of England.
It's probably for the viewing figures though, as much as anything. It's probably because they think that if she features someone like that, they're going to tell all their friends and whatever, and get them on, and then that's probably triple the viewing figures.
That's a good point. That is a good point. They do seem to be, the kind of people who would go straight home and then set it up to record and tell all the friends and family they're going to be on Jane McDonald, and then when it turns out that Jane's decided not to feature their little bit, they're all going to be gutted, aren't they? So
exactly.
So yeah. So that's what I've been mostly suffering through. She sings like a song at the end, and sometimes she's sort of superimposed onto the scenery that she's been cruising around, and she looks like a kind of ghost.
I've just got this vision of her sort of floating disembodied through the Norwegian fjords or something.
It's almost like that. It's almost like that. I believe on the one that she went round Scandinavia, she sang "Let It Go" as a part in song to the show, and then another one she sang ABBA, and yeah, it's just It's not going in recommend.
The worst thing is,
so
I'm
that's
kind
where
of
I'll
intrigued.
leave it, I think.
I kind of now want. I kind of now want to see how bad this actually is.
It's not a recommendation, but I do have great fears that me and my wife are going to stumble into an episode at some point in the future now that she wants to go on cruise. So let's move on to the show before I inadvertently call anyone else racist. And let's talk about what's on the show this week. So we're going to give our mid-term dream teams now that we're past the regular season halfway point. So we're going to cover that off in the feedback and shout-outs in a second. There's also a few corrections for me from last week's show, which is always good to get. We're going to cover loads of news of player re-signings, either back at a club or renewed contracts, and then we're going to cover results from 6 different competitions along with the fan views that we've had thrown in as well, Tim. So there's lots to get excited about and head through, and like I said, we're going to start off with a couple of corrections for me from last week. So my mini Mark rant last week was about the Thursday nights and how they're not that much of an inconvenience, and actually we all like to tune in and watch them on the television. But Sarah has pointed out that Sarah Mackenzie, who's going to be co-hosting next week, pointed out that regarding the Widnes versus Hull game not coming as a shock fixture, it did to the Hull fans and the Widnes fans, because it was only switched around about 3 weeks ago. It was meant to be Hull at home and Widnes away. So yeah,
fair enough then.
Steps on my point quite considerably, but in a valid way. Now, these are the fixtures that shouldn't be getting changed, aren't they?
Yeah, exactly. These are the ones you think that you can just agree on that one. If it's, for example, Warrington playing Widnes or something, you could probably reverse that one without too much damage.
Yeah, exactly. Now, another fixture that's been swapped around in a couple of weeks at the bank holiday weekend is Wigan versus Salford. It's moved from the Sunday afternoon to the Friday afternoon, which has inconvenienced me in the fact that a couple of weeks ago on the show I mentioned that Steve Mascord was having a
book signing at Wigan Central.
Signing event at Wigan Central, on the Sunday it would have come after the game. Now, as far as I understand, Steve Mascall's still running the same session on the same day at the same place, and I would highly recommend it. I sat and got a little bit sunburnt outside Wigan Central on Saturday afternoon. So it's still on the Sunday of May Bank Holiday weekend at Wigan Central, but the game now won't be preceding it, so that's on the Friday night. So I guess I'll be going to Wigan twice that weekend.
Well, I mean, going to
that's the news on that.
Yeah, going to Wigan Central is a hardship, obviously, for you.
I suffer greatly when I head there. Yeah, I went on Saturday afternoon and managed to hide quite well from Emma when I got back home how many pints I'd had in the brief spell that I've been out. She was a little bit surprised. So
it's a good job she's given up listening by this point, isn't it?
Well, yeah, because what I did is I slipped a bit of rugby talk in, you see, and that means she stops listening. So, and then I can say other stories. Yeah. I should have started with some rugby stuff, then slagged off Jay McDonald cruising, and then she never would have heard any of it. Okay, the next one is an email we received. Our email address is superleaguepod@gmail.com, and it's come from our friend from the continent, Carsten Brumer, our German/Swiss friend. He says, "Hi Mark, now a little feedback to the last pod, and let's just say I'm sorry before I start." I don't know why he's apologising. He said, Jimmy Kinehorse played in the last sanctioned test for Germany against the Wales Dragonhearts last year and even scored a try. The full match report is on the walesrugbyleague.co.uk website, and he gave me a link to that. And I'll be honest, I didn't realise he'd played in any proper, fully sanctioned international.
Especially mid-season.
I mean, the Dragonhearts is an amateur collection, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think it had amateurs, and I think possibly a couple of League One players might have snuck in as well.
Right,
I vaguely remember.
So when I was looking up on Jimmy Kinehurst's Rugby League project page, basically, this fixture isn't on there because they mustn't class the Welsh Dragonhearts as a legit fixture for what they put up on their website, so obviously that's why I didn't know it existed. So there you go. Anyway, Carsten goes on to say, for me as a German, it's quite important that we have some quality players and honour them, but also that a large part of the team comes from the domestic competition and we develop them. Germany has a 4-team comp, but it's sponsored by Steeden at least. Enough national pride here.
It means they don't drop the ball at least. If it's when it's wet.
They might have a better grip, yeah. Tim should write the blog about Streamgate. I live in a rugby league dead zone, and streaming is the only way to watch games. I love to watch the Standingly matches because it's funny commentary and it's really good quality grassroots footy. More amateur teams should do this. Now to the women's game. I love it. I would be scared as hell if one of them runs a line at me, but the Bradford Leeds game was impressive. Hopefully there will be more to watch in the coming weeks. Enough ranting from me. Can't wait for the next pod. I really enjoy the work you and your co-host. Cheers from Switzerland and love your league, Carsten. Oh, and go Cowboys.
Fair enough.
So yeah, are you going to write the blog? Where are we up to with that?
I'll be honest, I haven't started it, but no. We'll get onto it in the next couple of weeks.
Everyone might have seen that Bulls Live, the Proper Sport Facebook stream, showed the the Bradford versus St Helens game at the weekend. I didn't actually catch that one, but
the women's
so they
comp.
are still streaming. What did I say?
You said Bradford versus St Helens.
Yeah, it was Bradford versus St Helens
in the women's comp.
Oh right, okay.
Because they were locked out of Warrington, weren't they?
Well,
or were they?
They showed extended highlights, I think, in the end. There's a delayed feed on Sunday evening of that game. But yeah, no full replay as far as I'm aware.
It was a slightly less inflammatory statement this time, which shows they might have learnt from the last one.
Yeah, but I still think... there's a difference with that they're not allowed to broadcast it live because the Challenge Cup does have a TV deal in place on that front with the BBC. But good to see the women's streaming continuing there. Okay, Cutthroat Jake at cut_throat_Jake. This is kind of a tease to maybe some of the things we might talk about a little bit later on in terms of the Leeds Hull FC match. But John said, in his post-match press conference, McDermott claims the playoffs were ref differently to the rest of the season. Refs less likely to blow for penalties and more likely to let the game flow like internationals. Do the stats back him up? #blaming ref directives, not refs. So as you might expect him, I've done a little bit of digging. Now, I don't know if you've seen the comments from McDermott, but as I understand it, he basically said the regular season's ref differently to the last third of the year.
So what I read in the League Express was basically he said that the referees do alter what they consider to be a penalty during the regular season versus what it constitutes a penalty in the playoffs, and he said it was around the philosophy, and then Steve Ganson came back and hit back at these comments saying there's no difference, it's just the speed and intensity of the play is different, therefore it's refed accordingly.
Yeah, I would certainly say there's no directive to give fewer penalties in I don't know that for sure, but I would be shocked if there was an actual directive to give fewer penalties. I think there's a pressure from supporters, from coaches, from the TV and stuff to give fewer penalties, to see fewer penalties in these bigger showpiece events that are supposed to be sort of an intense showcase of the very fiercest that our sport can offer. But I've looked up some stats anyway, and the one thing that they do support on what McDermott says is there are fewer penalties given out in the playoff games in terms of the semi-finals and the grand final. So it supports that, but it doesn't support him at all on that first third of the season, last third of the season, unless as far as he's concerned 3 games is a third of a season, because the Super 8s are very consistent in terms of penalties given per game compared to the regular season. So I'll run through the numbers from the last 3 completed seasons that we've been under the current structure as it is. And basically in 2015, in the regular season, it was 13.6 penalties per game, and in the Super 8 it actually increased to 14.2 penalties per game. And then this was where it was the closest in the semi-finals and grand final as well. There was 11.3 penalties per game in those fixtures. So a little bit of a dip off, but that is completely covered by, like you say, the intensity, what's on the line for the players.
One of the other things that Steve Ganson said was around the gamesmanship and tactics that come in at that level, and I think that's entirely right, because if you think of all the, once you get into that extra pressure situation, all those little niggly things are going to start coming out, aren't they?
Well, there's a suggestion that you might be more inclined to put gamesmanship in, but also I think there's a suggestion as well. There's certain times where you might not be as inclined to do that, because you don't want to concede something for your team as well. So I think there are